Did you know that more than 50% of ERP implementation fail? Why? In many cases, because the investment does not match the return. Most of projects go off track due to delays, unclear priorities, or poorly set expectations. At Odoo, we know we have an amazing software, but we also know that's not enough. The key lies in how you implement it. Hello everyone, my name is Clara. I'm a business analyst in the Quickstart department at Odoo, and today I'd like to share with you the recipe for a successful implementation. We will discover together the different key principles of our methodology, and then we will see how it applies during the different steps of a project lifecycle. After that, we will have a small Q&A session, so please feel free to scan the QR code and write down your question. So, let's discover how our amazing project leader ended up with a 95% of successful implementation at Odoo. Let's start by redefining our mission as Odoo project leader, but as member of the Odoo community. Our mission is to bring real value to companies. We want to give them the best tool, and in a sentence, we want to help people achieve more in less time. What about our goal as project leader? Actually, we have one goal. We want to onboard the user on time and on budget. Actually, we even want, what does it mean? It means that we want to have our customer up and running on Odoo as quickly as possible, while both respecting the planning and the budget we agreed together. I said as quickly as possible because the velocity is a key element in our implementation. In fact, it helps us make sure we keep the involvement of our customer during the whole project, and a fast implementation also helps us to make sure the project stays a priority for them. So, let's see our key concept. The first one is keep things simple. I suppose you've heard a lot of that. By things, we mean two things. First, the communication should be simple, but also the solution that we deliver should stay simple. What about the communication? Our goal is to have an efficient, centralized, and fast communication during the whole project. For that, we use the principle of single point of contact. We want our customer to choose an ambassador that will be the point of contact in the project team, and on our side, the project leader will be the point of contact. Of course, you will have other people intervening during the project, like the developers or maybe an accountant or a specific user. We call them the key users. But the idea that every decision and every communication should involve the project leader and the ambassador. And we also want to keep like the least minimum people needed to make sure we stay fast and efficient. But not anyone in a company can be the right ambassador. In fact, the role of the ambassador is crucial for the success of the project. The ambassador should have a good knowledge of the business because he will explain the what the company needs and why they need it. So he should know the processes, the people, and the priorities and the challenge. The ambassador should also have a good decision power to ensure to stay efficient during the meeting and during the whole project to be able to take decisions rapidly. Of course, we want someone that has impact on the company because he will be in charge of leading the change. And we know a transition of ERP is not easy for everyone, so the change management is very important also. And we also need an ambassador that is available because transitioning to an ERP takes time and energy. What about our responsibilities as project leader? In fact, we will give the how. As project manager, Odoo expert, and transition expert, we will create the solution that answers the need and explain to the customer how we will implement it. We also are a long-term ally for the company, so our goal is to keep an eye on the long-term strategy for the company. I also wanted to remind you that the project is a big collaboration. We need both parties to make the project a success. Actually, we tend to say that's a 50-50 collaboration, but we need even more time on the side of the ambassador because it takes a lot of time to transition to an ERP. So I said the communication should be simple, but also the solution. As a project leader, we will challenge the customer all along the project to make sure everything we do has value for the project and value for the company. We want to make sure the ratio cost and return is always met. For that, we will focus on what we call the must-have, so what the company needs to be up and running like tomorrow on Odoo. What is the essential functionalities that you need to be able to run your business on Odoo. And everything else, we call it the nice to have. We try to keep it for a second phase of the implementation. Again, the idea is to go fast on Odoo and be efficient. By simple, we also say standard. Our goal is to have as standard as possible solution. Why? Because development will create added costs, generally added time, so delays on the project, and also added complexity. And I cannot count the customer that developed customized and complex solution that people will never use at the end because it's too complex. So try to be as simple and as standard as possible. Again, our goal is to deliver a simple solution that answers first the main need of the customer. A good way to make sure everything you do has value for the company is using the technique of, we say, 5 whys. In fact, it's just asking whys until you are completely sure that what the customer is asking is a must-have. Let's give you a typical example. The customer that wants to import 5 years of accounting data in the database. So my first question is really, why do you need those data in Odoo? And usually the customer answer, I need to be able to retrieve an invoice if a customer asks me like to reprint an invoice of last year or something like that. Okay, but why in Odoo? Why in Odoo? Do you have the information somewhere else? Usually they do, in Excel file or a backup of the former software. And then I ask, how many times a year or how many times a month do you have customer asking you those data? And usually the answer is like less than a month. So maybe it takes you 3 minutes to go in another software, look for the information, answer the customer. If you have it maybe 10 times per year, you win 30 minutes a year. Is it worth spending hours and hours importing 5 years of data for 30 minutes a year? My answer is no. So it's not a must-have. We keep it until the end, and usually we never do it. So that was for our first concept, keep things simple. The second concept is phase the project. Instead of spending time creating a big and beautiful solution, we will cut the project in phases and deploy a phase whenever it's ready. Why? Because it helps us meet different objectives in our implementation. The first one is the velocity. We create rapid launch so we can keep a short-term agenda and have a high velocity in the project. Then, this short-term launch also gives concrete results to the user. So we keep the customer involvement during the project. And finally, a simple, small solution, we also help the user onboarding, and at each phase, the user training will be smoother and smoother, and the adoption also. So we will cut the project in different phases that are usually flows, like the prospection from code to sale. And the idea is that we estimate the time on planning and the budget in terms of hours we need to launch that solution. I won't go deeper in that subject because my colleague Brice will talk about it just after the presentation, so please stay here if you are interested in the planning and budgeting. My only advice is to use deadlines. It's really important for the project because it gives a common short-term goal to the whole project team. Everything you do and all your organization is built on how we can meet the first deadline. So I hope it's clear for you now, our different concepts. Let's try to apply them during a project's life cycle. And for that, I will use the example of one of my former customers, Synergy. So that's a Belgian company selling and installing solar panels in Belgium. So you can see that every project goes to different steps. You have the kickoff, implementation by phase, go live, second deployment, and then we start over the implementation for phase 2, and so on and so on. So let's start with the kickoff. Every project starts with a kickoff. That's a very important moment in the project because it's the moment where you set the right foundation for the whole project. First, you will align on the methodology, so explain the same kind of thing I just did with you. Then, you can define stuff like who will be the ambassador, when do we meet, you name it. And after that, we will analyze the business flows and processes of the customer. At that moment, it's important for you to have a complete overview of the processes and the need and the challenge, not only the short-term needs. We want to have a full overview of the company and the processes to be able to define a long-term plan of the implementation and to make sure you use the resources and the hours completely in line with the priorities. And then it's also a good moment to engage the change, make sure the customer know what are the stakes of the project and what is needed from them. Let's go back to my company, Synergy. So they arrived at the office a few months ago. We had, for the kickoff meeting, they were super excited because they already tested Odoo a lot and they had so many questions about the software. And there were 5. We had the CEO, the accountant, the head of finance, a marketing officer, and an external consultant. Actually, they were super happy because of that new external consultant that will be the Odoo guy for the implementation and that has plenty of time to dedicate to the implementation. During the kickoff, I explained the methodology and I made them understand that the external consultant cannot be the ambassador. Why? Because he probably has not enough knowledge of the processes as he is new, and the people also, but mostly because it has no decision powers. So during the project, we will have many back and forth between the consultant and the management, so we will lose velocity, and so it's a high risk for the project. Another example, during that kickoff, the customer wanted to implement accounting ASAP because of the new regulation of the e-invoicing in January. So they wanted to focus on accounting and start rapidly. But again, my goal was to understand the whole business so that I presented the planning. And then my customer was able to present the planning to his team and make sure we arrange the agenda to have the right people at the right moment during the implementation. So, the kickoff is really important. My advice is do not confuse speed with haste. Even if you have a really excited customer, take the time to do things right before you start implementing the project. And then we start with the implementation of phase 1. So as a project leader, we will create the solution, show it to the customer. The customer will have to test, so usually the ambassador, then the key users. We will receive feedback, and when the solution is ready, we will train the final user. One big challenge here is to continue to focus on the must-have, because you will probably have new requests during the implementation, and make sure everything you do has value and allow you to meet your deadlines and your first objectives. So for my customer, Synergy, we started the implementation of our first phase that was about prospection, and they wanted me to implement a really complex validation system, like the salesperson do the quotation, then he send it to her team leader, then then the accountant will validate it, and then finally the CEO will send all the quotation. So this, according to me, has no sense and was really complex for nothing. I think this is linked to the fact that they did everything with paper, so they just bring one paper to a table, then to another. So I challenged them and I convinced them to go live without those validation system. And spoiler alert, we never use it. We never implement it at the second deployment. Okay, so that's it for the implementation. When your solution is ready and everyone is ready to use, it's time to go live. So this means start using Odoo for real for the first phase. One thing is that everyone should be ready and prepared. The challenge here is obviously the change management. You always have users not wanting to change the software or finding excuses to still using the other software. So prepare people, set a specific date, and also be there to support them. If we take the example of my customer, Synergy, they called me a week before the go live, and they told me we will have to delay the go live because we have a big project coming and everyone will be focused on that project. I don't think that's the right moment. I knew everyone was ready, the solution was ready. Even I knew that delaying the go live is not good for the project because people will forget what they learned. So I pushed them to go live, and I went on site to support them, and in fact everything was fine. So try to never delay a go live, and usually when you challenge a customer, you understand that it's always a matter of change management. And after the go live, we have what we call the second deployment. So the second deployment has several goals. The first one is just to receive the feedback and adapt the solution. Even if you train people and test it a lot, you will always have corner cases that you didn't think of during the go live. So at the moment when you treat those cases and adapt the solution. Then we can talk about the nice to have, see if they are always needed or not. Usually we can drop most of them. And we also use that moment to take a step back on the implementation, see how we can improve the solution, but also see how we can improve the collaboration. So we do what we call a progress report, and we check, okay, what we achieved, how much time did we spend, and what was well, and what can be improved. For example, for my customer Synergy, at the end of the implementation of the phase 1, we agreed on the fact that there were too many people during the meetings, so we had like internal discussion that slowed down the implementation. So we agreed together that we'll go back on project leader and ambassador on the meeting and the minimum needed key users. So that's an example for you. Then, when you finish with the second deployment of phase 1, you can start over and do the same for all other phases until the end of the project. It's important that you obtain a validation of the deployment of the phase before you go to the next one, otherwise you will lose the focus and have different topics in the same time on the project. So try to focus on one topic at a time. I hope everything is clear for you now. I can obviously talk of the methodology during hours. I have many examples, but we don't have the time. So there is the implementation methodology book here. Don't hesitate to take one in the halls. But to wrap up, our methodology is built on two main principles: keep things simple and phase the project. For us, the success of the project means onboard the user as quickly as possible, on time and on budget. But for that, you need your customer to understand their role, to dedicate the right time and the right people, and also to make the project a priority, just as we do. Also, focus on the long term. The short-term customer satisfaction is not a success of the project. Really think of the value you bring to the project over the time. And finally, my last advice would be think of the methodology as a guide, not a cage. use your common sense and adapt the situation to the customer and to the needs. Thank you.
Thank you for this nice presentation. Let's go for the question. We already have plenty ones. Given the diverse cultures, mentality, business process, market behavior, etc., in different countries and continents, I would like to know, as a new Odoo partner in another continent, if this exact methodology also applies there.
I think the base of the methodology, like the main concept, should be always kept, like focus on the velocity, on keep it simple. Of course, on the change management and on the communication, you should adapt to the customer you have in front of you. I know the fact of challenging the customer is quite difficult, independent of the culture, but sometimes you have people not ready to be challenged on their need. And for that, I think it's just a matter of setting the right expectation at the really beginning of the project.
Thank you. How much effort do you put on sales phase about the implementation methodology, or is the kickoff the first time they hear about it? Is the kickoff the right moment to set expectation, or should it be done during the sale in order to avoid misinterpretation or expectations?
That's a good question. So yes, our salespeople are trained on the methodology, and we have tools, like we send a PDF with the key principle of the methodology during the sales phase. Also, we explain that the customer will be challenged, that we will need time on their side, that we will need an ambassador, so they know in what they dive. But as you have a transition between the salesperson and the project leader when you start the project, it's important to re-clarify everything and go even deeper in the methodology at that moment. But yeah, it's important to talk about it during the sales process.
For each phase of an implementation project, are you doing the whole process again?
Yeah, actually, but usually by the phases, the implementation goes faster because the user and the ambassador have better competencies on the software and understand the software better and become more autonomous. So sometimes you don't really go until the end because the customer feels easy to take over the implementation and start training the user and configuring the solution.
And when do you recommend to train the user?
When the solution is ready, because when you train people on a solution that is not ready, it's really bad for change management. Like you lose half of the users.
How do you handle strong resistance from middle management?
I would say with communication.
Always?
Always, yes. It's always important to know who decided to buy Odoo or to transition on an ERP and why. And that's important to make sure everyone is aligned on why we do that. I would say, of course, communication, and also imply the salespeople in the communication, because they were there at the really beginning of the project. Sometimes they have different people during the sales process, so align and communicate with everyone.
And why doing 2 deployments and not doing 1 module at a time? Continuous iteration, bringing each time to the platform, what at a time?
Can you repeat?
Yes, of course. Why doing 2 deployments and not doing 1 model at a time? Maybe first question.
Okay, so we are not doing 1 module at a time because we try to work by flow. If I show you here the example of the planning, the idea is to cut the project in a flow that makes sense. So, for example, it has no sense to use CRM, but keep the quotation somewhere. It depends on the customer needs, of course. So we try to go by flow. Sometimes we try also to cut it by user. For example, we know this department will do that, so we can launch this department, and we know another department will still working on another software. So it's not by module. And why 2 deployments? That's a way to also to please the customer, to tell them, okay, this is not needed. We will keep it to the end, and we'll see if it is necessary or not, the second deployment. In a lot of cases, at that moment, they are finally convinced that it's not necessary anymore. But sometimes it is, but it's also a way to go faster in the project.
Okay. And maybe a last one. Why always challenge the customer on points that are important to them? Sometimes it can slow them down and damage the relationship. For example, approvals during a purchase.
So when I say always challenge, of course, use your common sense. The goal is not to ask why at every sentence of the customer, but I would say ask the right question and try to be like curious during the analysis. And if the customer tells you we do it like this, just ask, okay, why do you do it like this? For example, I have other customer working like this. What is important for you in that part of the business? And also try to align the main goal, like why we are changing from one software to Odoo with the request. And sometimes, I don't know, they want specific validation, but they told me that the reason why they're changing from a software to another is because our numbers are bad and our sales team are really not efficient, so our goal is to make the sales team more efficient, for example. So it depends really on the need of the customer, but of course, try to use your common sense, but ask why is really important.
Thank you. I think that will be okay.